Okay.
Yeah, hi everyone. Welcome to this monthly Reclaim webinar. I'm Thomas and I'll be the chair today. So the Reclaim Network is a UKRI-funded effort to build a national network, national and international network on all things nature-based solutions. It's an open network. Everybody's invited to join as members, but we have a steering group, and here's the people who sits on the steering group. So the project is led by Professor Kumar from the University of Surrey, but also input from University of Warwick, Bath, the UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology, and Bangor University. Next slide. So just to give you a flavor of the network, it's got more than 600 members, and members have all sorts of roles. There's a predominantly in academia, but there's also people from charities, consultancies, local governments, business, etc. And the interest of the network has also sort of fairly wide, spreading widely from health and well-being down to more specifics, green infrastructure interventions such as green roofs or hedges. So if you're not a member yet, you can follow us on Twitter or and sign up to become a member. So every month, first Wednesday of every month, we run a webinar. It's been very successful. We've run more than 20 of them so far, and we'll keep running them until the end of the project, which is in February 2025. We run them at lunchtime. Normally, we will have two speakers who'll give us a presentation of about 20 minutes. The webinars are recorded, so you can find a record of previous webinars on our YouTube channel. So if you're interested, if you think you have something interesting to say and want to share with the rest of the network, you can get in contact with us on the email below, info@reclaimnetwork.org, and maybe offer a talk. I'm sure we have a few spaces left, even though I'm sure they're also filling up quickly. So do get in touch. So I'm delighted to present the two speakers today. We've got Tom Palmer, who's an engineer at Southend-on-Sea, who will be the first speaker, talking about integrating nature-based solutions across the city of Southend. And after Tom, we're followed by Dr. Karina Corada-Perez, who's going to talk about greening the urban landscape, the potential of domestic gardens for enhanced air quality and thermal comfort. I'm sure you will have questions to the two speakers, and we'll have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. So type your questions in the question and answer box, and we'll take them and try to answer them at the end of the webinar. So I think without further ado, I will hand over to our first speaker. So this is Tom from Southend-on-Sea, talking about how his involvement in nature-based solutions and their implementation across the city of Southend. So, Tom, over to you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. So yeah, today I'm going to talk about some of the things that we are kind of doing across Southend at the moment, and give you a bit of a flavour of some of the challenges we've had and some of the successes and kind of the lessons learned. So there's three main areas, I suppose, that I'm going to focus on in terms of projects. And the first one of those is catchment to coast. It's one of the 25 national FCRIP funded projects. So it's Flood and Coastal Resilience Innovation Programme. That's the EA love an acronym. And the focus of these is all about delivering new and innovative measures to reduce flood risk and coastal erosion, doing things differently, trying things, new techniques, new processes, new measures, or maybe even existing measures in different places or different situations, and gathering data. And the whole goal of this is learning. So the kind of the process is very different. We don't have to meet BCR ratios as much. We don't have to do work up front to justify schemes. It's a case of going and trying it, gathering the data and seeing what worked and what didn't. So it's very unusual, and we're very lucky to have got the money to do this. So it's a 6-year project. We're about halfway through. We've got 16 sites across the project area, across the south of Essex. So most are in Southend, but some are in Thurrock and some of the districts in between in Essex itself. We split the sites into upper, middle and lower catchments based roughly on what we're looking to do. So the upper sites focus more on kind of agricultural land and working with farmers to reduce runoff and improve water quality. The green areas as shown on the map are the mid catchment, which is more about retrofitting water quality, water storage and reuse measures into urban areas. And then the yellow ones are kind of coastal based and coastal erosion reduction. So yeah, Southend is a very water stressed area. We get 50% of the average rainfall in the UK. So as well as flooding and drought, flooding and coastal erosion, increased risk as part of the changing climate, we've obviously got the risk of drought as well. So how we're getting the rain is changing, and the project is focusing on how we can kind of flatten the curve, I suppose, between too much and too little, and capture and store it when there is too much, and then treat it for reuse when there isn't as much there. So yeah, trying to use nature-based solutions wherever possible and maximising the multiple benefits as well. That's something I'll come to later, but something that's probably not been as good as being captured and measured historically. And we're working a lot with communities because we want, when the project ends, we don't want to just walk away and leave things, which again is another historic issue with the kind of council projects. On to the next thing. We want to get that buy-in and that continued kind of engagement and continued use and maintenance of the measures as well. Yeah, as part of a data-driven project, it's very focused on gathering the learning, so quantitative and qualitative. So we've got a lot of monitoring equipment in capturing flow data, water quality, weather data, wave data, all kinds of things like that. We've got good baseline data across most of the sites, and we're doing a lot of surveys at the moment as we start the co-design with people, especially in terms of the SUDS retrofit side of things. And we're very lucky to have 15 partners in the project, ranging from kind of knowledge bases as well. So we've got a lot of good expertise contributing to this. So I'll whiz through a few of the sites we've got just to give you a bit of a flavour. I'll go a bit quickly given the time. So one of the first ones we've got is working with Anglian Water at a sewage treatment works. It's upstream of an area of salt marsh that is stifled by algal growth, and one of the potential main contributors to that in terms of the nutrient loading is the sewage treatment works itself. So we're working with them to put in some wetlands on the storm overflow. So that's the surface water, not the kind of foul. We're doing 12 wetlands, so 4 lots of 3. Is that 3 lots of 4? No, 4 lots of 3. Get it right, with various measures, so we can kind of quantify the changes and measure them better. So we've got that kind of standardization and the comparability across there. It's one of the first in the country, actually, I've been told, which is great. And Anglian Water are kind of committed to upscale it at this site and also expand it to other sites depending on what measures work and what don't. And we're hoping to see that by putting these measures in, we can show a change further downstream and also promote the salt marsh growth, which will help reduce coastal erosion further downstream. So yeah, looking to use sand filters, kind of wetland planting, and also mycelium and mushroom-based things, which is still a lot of conversations ongoing about that because it's a very new area, but we're seeing what we can do with that at a lot of sites. Another site we've got, I'll just get the text up really quickly, is Manchester Drive. We are capturing, storing and treating highway runoff here via a system of swales and planting, and again using sand filtration UV filters and mycelium to treat the water, store it in 100,000 litre tanks. So we've got 4 25,000 litre firefighting tanks, I think they are. And the goal there is to have it be reusable in the allotment, which is immediately downstream. So they spend a huge amount of money using fresh water on the site. A lot of people do have water butts, but what we're doing here is reducing the flow into the river, which is just off the bottom of the map, reducing the downstream flood risk, but they're also kind of increasing that drought tolerance as well. And we're going to be gathering a lot of good data on how the different measures perform in terms of treating the water quality from the runoff, and getting it to the standard that's required for an allotment, because obviously people could be eating the food that's on there, so it needs to be of sufficient quality to be watering those plants. So yeah, we're just starting the co-design phase with the community here. It's a couple of stages, one working with the allotment to integrate with the site and feed the treated water in, and then the other is working with the properties at the top of the site to landscape the suds so that they provide wider benefits to things like amenity, biodiversity, air quality as well. It's a very busy road, and then obviously we get all the health benefits and the kind of the cooling benefits from them as well. All right. And last in this kind of range of projects is our retrofit house, which was some social housing that Southend bought off the open market to put into social housing stock. They'd got some money to go to town basically with the energy efficiency measures, and we found out about it and said, can we jump in and do the same for water efficiency, which we did. And this was completed last November, and a family moved in February actually. So they're in the house now, which is great. And what we've done in terms of the water side of things is none of the water from the site enters the surface water sewer anymore. It is all captured and stored on site, either for infiltration into all of the permeable paving. It's either captured in water butts for use in the garden, or it feeds planters in the front and the back of the house. We've also got a fancy system inside the house which reuses the water from the shower, the sink, and the washing machine. It treats it and then allows it to be used down the toilet, and also back into the washing machine, I think, as well, which again reduces water entering the sewer, and also reduces the amount of fresh water being used. We're currently gathering a lot of data on how all of that is performing. So unfortunately I don't have any numbers to report, but the family is saying it's really easy to live with, which is great. And another thing we did was remove the outside tap, because I personally think it's a bit ridiculous that we can just put fresh water on your garden. I know it's good, we need gardens, but rainwater is so much better, and it's there and it's free, so why not use that first? So that was, yeah, quite a new thing to try there. So it's won a few awards as well, which we're quite proud of. Another big piece of work we're doing is on Marine Parade, which is on our seafront. We get a lot of flooding here. We get a lot of flooding all across the city when there's tide locking. The rainwater just can't get out quick enough. It backs up and causes problems. That is often surface water, but in some occasions there is foul systems and CSOs as well. So there's a lot of problems. Anglian Water are kind of targeting this with us. We had an opportunity to go in and regenerate the area. It's a bit grey. It's a bit dated. A lot of the plants that were put in before have died, as they always do. They weren't really appropriate to be in the kind of salty air conditions and have the sand on them, and they weren't looked after, to be honest. And it's a bit dated, a bit aged, not looking so nice. So we've got some levelling up money to go in and regenerate it, and it was again another opportunity to make it greener, make it nicer, get those multiple benefits in terms of heat reduction, air quality, biodiversity, amenity, all of the things. Put in some EV parking as well, and also manage the water on site better. So what we're looking to do is capture and store all of the water from the 100-year plus climate change, which is 45% Southend, rainfall events, and use them to feed tanks underground that can then feed the plants via capillary action and kind of rock wool systems that we've got as well. So that in turn reduces quite a significant amount of water that would enter the sewer, and takes a bit of pressure off that system and reduces the risk of the tide locking. And if tide locking is going to be an issue, we're putting in some surface water beacons. So that's actually being funded as part of the catchment to coast side of things, which we just showed. So if there is a risk of a high tide, heavy rainfall and sewer surcharging, we're going to have some visual beacons so people can be aware and be prepared to protect themselves from any risks from that. And then the last one we've got, so again, working with Anglian Water, we're very fortunate that they've got a great interest in the area in terms of reducing flows into combined sewers, which we've got a lot of as a kind of a Victorian city. A lot of misconnections and things like that, and that they've got a £50 million programme where they're going to be doing a lot of work to put in measures to better manage surface water and reduce those risks. So that's starting next year, actually. Yeah, focusing on nature-based solutions. So again, for us, that's a perfect opportunity to work with them, get those multiple benefits in terms of managing surface water flood risk, but also improving amenity, biodiversity, and all the things I've already said. So one site we're working on as a starter is on Thorpe Hall, where it's their final effluent. So after water's been treated at the sewage treatment works, it goes down a humongous pipe, which has got problems with it. I'll just say that. And every now and again, it surcharges when there's very heavy rainfall and it floods houses. So we're working to put in a system of swales and things here to capture that surcharge and manage the water before it reaches the houses. But again, as I said, getting those multiple benefits, all about multiple benefits. And this one especially, we're looking to integrate some active travel aspects, so things like cycle lanes. So that is an opportunity to bring in some extra funding and kind of raise awareness within the local community as well, because it's obviously a very sensitive issue for them. But they do use the space, even though it's in the middle of the road. A lot of people walk their dogs there, so it's making it a nicer space for them to do that. And yeah, this will be used, this project and all of the catchment to coast learning, which I think, yeah, there we go, will be used to inform this kind of range of schemes. So we don't know what we're going to be doing and where yet, but there will be a lot more of this going on, which is going to be great to see. So challenges, we've obviously had quite a few of these. What am I doing for time? I'll go a bit quicker. So silos, we're any organisation, you especially local authorities, people are lots of stuff going on, lots of people wanting lots of things done. It's very hard to kind of speak to other people and identify opportunities to work together. They exist, but it's hard to kind of start those conversations and get things moving. Internally and externally, in terms of partners, people always work on different timeframes, got different priorities in terms of what they're interested in, and different understanding as well of kind of opportunities as well as problems and how best to address them. A lot of fear of failure. That's kind of a systematic thing. I think people are scared to try and do new things in case it doesn't work. And again, that's the thinking as well. So yeah, funding, there's a lot of it around, which is great, but it's quite hard to find the bit you need because it's usually very focused on specific things, and sometimes it appears and you've got 2 weeks to apply and then it's too late. So very frustrating. So general lack of understanding and data in terms of the wider benefits. I think that is a huge thing at the moment, and that's something we're very much looking as part of Catchment to Coast to push and use the weight of the data we gather as part of the project and the 24 other nationally to show, look, here is some real world data showing the benefits of the things we've gone and done and tried. And yeah, someone at Flood and Coast said that Flood and Coastal Erosion Risk Management has more pilots than Heathrow. There's a lot of schemes where things are tried and then it doesn't translate into kind of real world business as usual. It's always a trial and then it's back on the shelf and then there's another trial, which is very frustrating. And in general, water is not really something on people's radar, even in the southeast of England, where we haven't got enough of it. It's you turn on the tap and there it is, off it goes down the drain. You don't really worry about it until you see it on the news when there's too much or not enough, and people don't fully appreciate it, which is something we're trying to change. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on, energy prices and things, and there's always been a focus on energy and carbon and things like that, but we're trying to shape the corner for water and the multiple benefits you can get from the schemes that look to manage it better. So that's the bad stuff. The good stuff, of course, there's been a lot of it, thankfully. And the top one, I only realised this the other day, actually, is that Southend, we're very lucky that we have the kind of the team in place to go and just do things and try them and take those opportunities, which a lot of places don't. And someone said to me once that you need 3 people really to make projects work. The first is a political representative who's on board and supportive. The next is someone kind of in upper management who's supportive and can get you the funding and manage those sort of things. And then you need an officer on the ground to actually go and do it. And I think we're very lucky to have all of those and more, which is great. Yeah, given the risks of climate change in the area, everyone's pulling in the right direction, really. So other risk management authorities like Anglian Water, Environment Agency, Essex and Suffolk Water, we're all trying to do the same things, but doing them in a way that kind of fits the regulations and responsibilities that we have. So we're getting a lot better at joining up. So that partnership I showed with Anglian Water is brilliant. Yeah, kind of going to create some very interesting things going forwards. And yeah, buy-in. Politically, we've got a bit of an odd landscape here. We have elections 3 years out of every 4, so politicians are always in politician mode or arguing about things they want to do. So it's very hard to actually go and do things. But the more we've spoken to politicians and also communities that are at risk, after some conversations, they've all been on board, which is good. And it is a bit of an easy sell when you're trying to reduce flood reduction, so reduce flood risk, reduce coastal erosion. People have their concerns about how you do it, but they're usually on board. So we've been quite lucky there. And yeah, trying those multiple benefits. I've said it multiple times. That's the big thing at the moment. I think having worked in this area for 15, nearly 20 years, probably actually, schemes started as flood risk schemes, then they started as being kind of flood risk schemes and SUDs with a few extras, awesome biodiversity, awesome planting, and it's kind of taking those next steps to do it not just as a flood scheme with some extras, but as a fully integrated scheme. And I think we're in a really good position to be doing that. So not just thinking about the water, thinking about the active travel and the planting, biodiversity, and all of the other things kind of on a similar level, which isn't really done. And then the learning, last but not least, is going to change local policy for us in Southend and South Essex. The catchment to coast stuff will obviously go back to DEFRA and feed into national policy whenever that happens. Many years off, I imagine, but the things we're doing now, we're already learning, and there's already people that are looking and listening and getting that understanding and appreciation of the importance of this and the opportunities for working together, which is really good. So it's smashing down those silos a little bit, which is great to see because they're hard to avoid. So yeah, that's a bit of a flavour. Then I've put a couple of bits on catchment coast, so it's worth a look. And I think the questions are coming at the end, aren't they? So I'll hand back.
Thank you, Tom. That was really excellent, really interesting. Good examples. I liked your reflections on barriers and opportunities and successes. So I'm sure we'll have questions at the end. So thank you. So we'll go directly to our next speaker, and Dr. Karina Corada-Perez from University of East of London. And when Karina is done, completed her presentation, then we'll have a 10-minute Q&A session. So the title of Karina's presentation is Greening the Urban Landscape, the Potential of Domestic Gardens for Enhanced Air Quality and Thermal Comfort. So Karina, if you will share your screen.
Yes.
If I can then encourage everybody to use the Q&A button at the top of your Teams, and you can type in your questions there, and we'll select questions for the speakers at the end. Thank you. Karina, over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So today I will talk about a project that was funded by Reclaim, the Clean Air Garden. So as we know, and I think I will still talk about the multi-benefit that green infrastructure can deliver to us. As you can see here, we have parks, trees, green wall, different kind of green infrastructure in our cities. However, this kind of green infrastructure, urban gardens, which is an area of horticultural activities take place, we don't know too much about, and we don't know exactly the benefit or related with air quality and thermal comfort. So that is the focus of this presentation. So as I said, domestic garden, also known as a residential, private, or home garden, is an area of land associated with the residential property. Here you can have different kind of plants, vegetables, and herbs. There are multiple in different size, style, function. You can have in your front garden or your rear garden, and all these kind of dimensions and everything that you put in this garden will change the benefit as well. Some of the benefit that I screening in the literature, we know that the benefit direct of the domestic garden is building resilient provision of food and medicine plants, pollination, and many other, and especially in COVID time, we garden promote well-being. This joy to grow plants, I think, was incredible for our mental health during that time. Also, it rise environmental awareness. Who people have planned or garden at home, they are more awareness about the environmental problems in our urban areas. But also, some of the literature mention local climate regulation, but we don't know too much about it. So we found a research gap about the domestic gardens, and is, for example, in one of the literature review, current one in 2019, represent that only 1% of the studies that literature review done was focused on domestic garden, which represent a lack of research. Also, we know the positive impact on mental health and well-being, but the direct impact of air quality and temperature is unexplored. And in addition to this, especially in the UK, last year, there's a report that mentioned that 4 million from garden contain no plant at all, and a quarter of them are now totally public. So that means that if you lose urban gardens, you also are losing the option to provide multiple benefits to people or the resident. So consider that we start this project, the Clean Air Garden. So we think that if most of the half of the population will live in cities, cities now is quite crowded, and the multiple benefit, again, I will repeat that, that garden can provide to the resident at home. Probably we need to know more about the benefit that this local and small area in front of our house can deliver to us. So maybe that domestic garden, they have the potential to protect us from the impact of air pollution and rising temperatures. So our project aim was to investigate how domestic garden impact local air quality and temperature regulation, and how these impacts are associated with the spatial configuration. That means all different garden designs. So we have 3 objectives. One was to scope the experimental sites where poor air quality and social deprivation correlate with the opportunities to explore the different domestic garden design that is they are in London. After that, we want to quantify and compare. We study particulate matter PM10 and PM2.5, and temperature. Our original idea was identify 3 types of garden, but I explained what happened after that. And transfer all these preliminary information in a guidance. So we start the project. We start in January to select some of the domestic garden across London, and then during a year, starting in August, we start with the summer campaign, and we ended just last May with a spring campaign. So we measure for all a year 8 different gardens. So was the first part of our project. We identified some areas in London where areas deprivate and also high pollution. So the orange areas, you can see that is the correlation between these two things. So it's the private area with high level of air pollution, particularly where PM10. Once we identify these areas, we were around to these 3 locations, mostly the east side of London. This purple circle represent where UEL, the University of East London, is located. So we think that this area could be a very good initial state for our project. So we have the support of Newham, Tower Hamlet, and Enfield Council, and we were around these 3 boroughs. So we just left some leaflet at home. We were around different this location, this area in London, and we just leave, as you said, all the information and all the objectives of this project to look for participants. And these are some of the gardens that we found in these areas. As you can see, not much of, we have a lot of gardens, pavement gardens, with some grass, but nothing like a barrier, because at the initial state of our project, we think we classify 3 different gardens designs, which is an open, we will use light control, a barrier, a gray infrastructure barrier, and a vegetative barrier. But during our leafling, we realized that they are, well, mostly they are pavement and some of the grass and some vegetation on the garden. But well, this is, and we measure at the end in these 2 locations in Barking, the blue, this is moved, but it's more of this area. This blue line, blue star is in Barking, and the red one was in Enfield in the North Circular area. At the end, we have these 5 gardens in the front of the North Circular, which is a motorway with a high traffic. And then in Barking, we have only 3 houses that allow us to enter to the front garden and measure air pollution and temperature. These are the specific garden that we measure. These 3 and these 2 were measured in 1 week. So we have 1 week in summer, autumn, spring, winter and spring, and we're trying to keep the same 3 locations and or in case 2 locations the same week, so we can compare. That happened in Enfield, and this is Barking with the 3 other gardens. Sadly, these 3 locations we couldn't complete in summer, but well, we have 3 in 3 seasons. What happened here? Related with the vegetative barrier, they are quite different as well. Was super difficult to find participant for our project. So every participant that say yes, we just measure there, and with different hedges. As you see, all they have a high, a length, the same, similar length. The weight is different. We have within 40 centimeters to almost 2 meters, because this was far away. but still we think that we have a good representation of the different garden that is around London. So as I said, we measure PM 2.5 and PM 10 and temperature for a week is season. As you can see here, one of my colleagues did this planter where we keep inside a battery to support and give energy to the monitor. The monitor measure PM and also some humidity, temperature as well. And also we have a logger here with the temperature data. The size and the height was always was the same. And then this planter intend to don't disturb anything around the garden and trying to be like a part of the garden. And we measure and we put this planter in the same position every time. So as you can see in this image, we have a schematic representation of the planter, and the blue circle is the air pollution, and in the red circle is the temperature monitor. And we measured this for a week in 4 seasons. So related with the result so far, for temperature is quite straightforward, and we know exactly what is going on there. The temperature data in London, well, we divided at the end in two kinds. One is in warm days that represent only summertime, and the cold days is the rest of the season here in London. You can see the average temperature in each campaign that we have. And in autumn, the average was 12 degrees, in winter 10, and in spring also 10 degrees. So we group all the data related with temperature with cold days related with these 3 seasons, and in the warm days, just summer. So here is the final data related to temperature and with the 3 different garden designs. As you can see in the red, this red line represents the average temperature when we measure in summer is 21 Celsius degree. And the first line in green represents the temperature, the average temperature for the vegetated garden. And in the bottom, you can see the pavement garden. So there is a difference. During all measurement in summer, gardens tend to decrease the temperature by 1 degree. Instead of the pavement area, they increase the temperature for almost plus 4 degrees. So the average temperature of the pavement garden was 6 degrees higher than in the vegetated garden. And I think this confirms that the cooling effect of vegetation. This happened in summer. In cold season, we can see similar, improvement as well. The red line, again, represents the average temperature during these 3 seasons, was 11 degrees. And the pavement temperature, I think, yes. So the garden tend to increase a little the temperature. And the pavement also increase the temperature in winter. But this means that the average temperature of the pavement garden was 1 degree warmer than the vegetated garden, but still, we can say that both the vegetated garden is close to the ambient temperature, so we can demonstrate the cooling effect relative to the pavement garden again. So we think for the temperature, we have a clear idea what happened between these 3 different garden designs. But in relationship with particulate matter, we have, this is all the average. We compare what happened with the long design compared to the pavement garden. And we think, the average consider only summer, autumn, and winter. We can see that it's an improvement. Even if you have grass or a vegetated garden, you will improve PM10 and PM2.5 in almost 25%. But in spring, we don't have data in one of our garden, and in the other, when we compare with vegetated garden and pavement garden, the data said that we increase air pollution by more than 50%. So now we are just working on a new way to present the result and study. So here, for example, I'm working on this thing now, but we compare, for example, what happened with these three type of garden. And you can see in winter and spring, we have a high concentration of air pollution in the gardens, in vegetated gardens. And we're trying to create co-founders and see if any weather condition is affecting this data. But we are working on this right now. So I hope to submit sooner a paper where you can see the final result. But we are working now individually what happened in each garden to have a clear idea the effect of garden designs. Well, in addition, I want to show you some of the workshop that we just did last Monday. This Monday, we have a workshop in UEL when we present some of the results, and also we have 20 participants here trying to connect with nature, why we need more green infrastructure, why we need to keep our gardens. And yeah, was a very good session for everyone. Here, the first photo, for example, these four people were part of the project, and they come to see the final result of the project. So we were very happy to host them. So a key message, it seems there is a potential here of domestic gardens if we promote the access to this area, and we promote also maintain garden or from garden, probably will have an effective nature solution for urban policies, which can enhance human well-being, social integration, and improve of health lifestyle. Season, we know that is an important factor. Spring, something happened there. We associate with pollen or wind direction, but we are just study that part. But season is very important of our result. Is a co-founder. Hedges in front of garden can influence temperature regulation. So in cold months, you can increase by almost a degree. And in warm temperature, you can cool your place for almost by 2 degrees. But we think that we need further study and necessary to validate this result, because with only 8 gardens, we cannot just give a great conclusion, but we're trying to create the first data. So this is the first time that we show what is going on with gardens. Yeah, so thank you so much, and I hope to have many questions now. I will just stop sharing.
Yes.
Can I hear you?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That was very interesting and very exciting to see that this came out of a research project that was sponsored by the Reclaim Network. So very, very interesting and very good to see. For the Q&A session, I will hand over to my colleague, Neria, and I believe there are already some questions in the Q&A. So Neria, over to you.
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you, Karina and Tom, for your great presentations. There's a few. I'm going to start in order. So the first ones are for Tom. Tom, how did you select the nature-based solution to implement if you were not sure about how they would perform? And I would add also how it was very interesting that you mentioned that people are scared of failure. Is that the local government, or like who is? Could you expand on that a little bit, please?
So yeah, starting with that one then, it's a tough one because it varies with the organisations. Definitely, if you speak to the right person in the right organisation, then you can push things forward. So there probably isn't a simple answer to that one, but quite often with an organisation, it's kind of a bit of an underlying philosophy, and you'll pick it up quite quickly that they're quite risk averse and aren't willing to try stuff. But using Anglian Water as a good example, they've recently got some very good people in and who've been able to get money internally to then go and do these things, and they're really good. So it's trying to get those people work together, do some things, and then that helps kind of spread that philosophy of yes, we can go and try things because look, we've done it here. So yeah, in terms of the nature-based solutions, then that's a good question actually, because we're halfway through the project. We've only kind of constructed one site. We're still at the detailed design kind of phase for a lot of them. And part of that has been because the sites have changed, designs have changed quite a lot. It's been very fluid. But the kind of starting point was that we knew the problem that we wanted to investigate or reduce the risk of. So it was either kind of slowing flows in upper catchments or improving water quality as well. Whereas the mid catchment and the retrofit, so sorry, this is talking from a catchment to coast perspective, it was kind of capturing the water, storing it and treating it. So that immediately lends itself to certain types of solution. And what we did was then have a kind of co-design session with all the partners. We'd have a lot of input, all the multiple benefits we can get, different ways of looking at things, come up with a design. Then we'd cost it, see if we could afford it. Sometimes we could, sometimes we couldn't. That would change the size, and then we'd kind of go around in a bit of a circle. And I can see the question about maintenance as well. That was definitely a factor. So where we did it was a big factor, because on land that we own and manage, it was much easier to implement things. We haven't got to go through kind of lengthy conversations, legal agreements, MOUs in terms of doing works and then having them looked after. So, and that did stop a couple of sites going forward, and we had to change priorities. So yeah, very much an iterative process and quite a long process, but that's all part of the learning, I suppose, and that was part of it. So yeah.
Thank you, Tom. A question for Karina. What percentage of people responded positively to your invitation to participate?
Only 8.
And how many did you release? How many booklets or?
I know that we print 300 letters, and we leave it in the box drop, and only 8, and we knock doors for months, and we have a gift card also for £100, and we expect to have at least the minimum 10, but we couldn't. We don't know exactly. We talked with a lot of people for I remember 3 months. For that reason, we couldn't measure embarking because we have to start in summer last year. So we have some participants also, more than 8, probably 12, but the other 4, they are separately. So the idea is to measure in the same location or similar street, just because the influence of traffic or weather conditions or many things. So we want to try to, well, in that moment, we expect to measure at least 2 homes in the same street to have one control and see what happened with the other designs. But I don't know. We're trying to do our best, and we have this A that we can compare, but the rest, fortunately, I don't know what happened actually.
That's interesting, and it relates to the question for Tom, which is what is the future of the projects? Like, if citizens have them within their property, who's in charge of the maintenance, and is there any scheme in place where there's a shared responsibility, or how do you deal with that?
So yes, the goal, a big underlying goal, especially with Catchment Coast, is to raise awareness and kind of get that community interest and buy-in and ultimately ownership. So ideally, we'd like residents associations or local volunteer groups to take sites on and maintain them going forward. So there's some where we're putting in new community gardens to use the water that we're capturing and storing and treating. And yeah, lots of community groups, residents groups, and they've all been very positive, but obviously we've got to get to the point of them signing a bit of paper to say yes. So thankfully, pretty much all of the sites we've got are council owned or kind of not under private ownership. So if we can't get communities involved and actually take them on, there is that backup option that we will take them on and maintain them going forwards. And the goal with all the kind of the sudsy type features is that we design them in such a way that it does minimize the maintenance. So using appropriate planting, having appropriate slopes and grass cover and things like that. So there isn't an onerous increase in maintenance in terms of the type or the frequency. So that was another kind of design consideration to throw into the mix to make things nice and interesting. And again, a lot of learning to be had there. We're hopeful. We've had a lot of positive conversations, a lot of people very interested. But yeah, it's just that final doing it, because as I said in the presentation, we don't want to just build it and walk away. We're very keen for this, that the legacy is everything. It's all about after the project finishes. That's going to be the most important bit, really. Not walking away. We're already talking about whether we can keep data sensors and things like that out to keep gathering the information post-project completion, and maybe do surveys with residents and things and see how they're finding the local spaces and stuff like that. So yeah, we'll have to see what happens, but we've got lots of plans in place, I suppose. So there's a primary plan and a backup plan there at least. So.
It's really interesting to see the practical implications of the follow-up and the maintenance of the project, which is one of the hard things always, no? When the money runs out. A question for Karina. Does having a hedge and the height of it have a greater influence on reducing air pollution than other garden vegetation, like a lawn, for example? And did you know the difference between gardens with hedge and lawn to those with just hedge and paved area for air pollution?
Yeah, we compare both. Well, in terms of the different height of the hedge, the three hedges the three home with hedges, actually they have almost the same height. The difference was the weight. In the weight, we have only 40 centimeters and the other was 2 meters. So now we are identifying if that they have an impact in air quality. But I am studying that part now individually. But I assume we are comparing also with what the other literature said about hedges. And there are a lot of simulations and field work that have indicated that hedges can reduce the exposure of, for example, pedestrian in the middle area. But also they can export and they can transport over the hedge all of the pollutant. So maybe there's something with the wind and the height of the hedge as well, and the type of hedge and the condition of the garden, that maybe they are creating a vortex and they increase the air pollution probably in the area. But it's something that we need to analyze, because the co-founder of air pollution, especially for the garden, there are multiple. We are comparing rain, we are including raining also in our study, because most of the cold season, well, is London, so rain all seasons. So we are study that part, including other weather conditions like wind speed and wind direction as well, as I said. And the type of hedge is also a variable here in this project. So our idea now is compare the vegetated garden with open, just pavement garden, and also with grass, so we can see what is the best effect or which one is best to have in our front area.
Thank you. And this might be also a question for both of you. It's in relation to artificial grass being laid more in back gardens than in front. So do we know if artificial grass is proved to be hotter than paved surfaces? And maybe the same question could apply for water management. Do they perform in the same way, or are there differences?
I don't know, Tom, but in my opinion, an artificial one is just for beauty and aesthetic reason. In terms of air pollution, indeed, there are some studies that there are small particles of plastic, maybe with the rough. And when you use this artificial garden, so the effect is not the best, of course, and also increased temperature. We didn't include in our study artificial grass, but probably we need to think what happens when you have that kind of thing at home. And I think for flooding also it's similar, no, Tom?
Yeah, in terms of flood risk, it doesn't have the infiltration rate or also the kind of treatment properties of grass, so it's yeah, not a fan.
Neither.
Okay. Well, there's no more questions so far, so I think we can wrap up here. I'm going to thank you so much for all your questions, and thank you, Karina and Tom, for your great answers. And I'm giving the mic back to Tom.
Thank you, Neri. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. I thought that was really great. It's been a great webinar. I think we had 2 really good presentations, and it's just so interesting how complicated the science is and how even more complicated it becomes when you have to put this into in a real world where people have to adopt it and accept it and find the funding. And so I think we've seen the whole gamut of challenges here, but also some really interesting and effort to try to push this forward for everybody's benefit. So thank you both. Thank you for everybody who attended. I think it's been an hour well worth spending. I hope you think the same. Just to, before we close, bring your attention to the next webinar. So this will be on the first Wednesday of every month. So it's the 7th of August at the same time, 12:30, where we'll have again 2 presentations. One from the Director of Operations from Stormwater Shepherds, who's going to talk about pollution from highway runoff, which I think is it's a topic that's in vogue at the moment, and Professor Ian Mell from Manchester talking about nature-based solutions in Asian megacities. So something else to look forward to. So with that, thank you everyone for joining, and I'm wishing you all a pleasant summer. Thank you everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.